What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Sofa Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Jewell, joined today with Alex Putnam. Alex, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic, brother. How are you?
I'm doing good. This is your season, draft season. You were pumped for it. How are you feeling post-draft?
To be honest, I think it could have gone a little bit better, but overall, I'm happy with the progress. Um, you know, as always, there were some great surprises going on in the draft. So, a lot of fun, a lot of surprises. Great season for mock draft people, though. To be honest, a lot of mock drafts went really well. I know that ours went pretty well in the grand scheme of things. We got at least 8, 9 picks, right? Something like that, at least. So, I feel like you and I did pretty well with our mock draft. A lot of other people did as well. I know I followed Bengal NFL Stock Exchange really closely, so both of them did pretty well with their podcast as well. Their mock draft. So, overall had a great time following the draft this year. Overall, some risers, some people that fell. Overall, had a great time with it. How do you feel?
I mean, I thought for our mock draft, I thought it went better than I expected. We were texting first round, and it was like, oh, we got this guy, we got this guy. I think the Jags traded back, and then they still picked Brian Thomas, which we projected. So I
Yep.
feel like overall we did pretty good. I mean, I was a
Yeah,
little bit surprised. No, go for it.
considering some of the trades that we had, I still had Tyler Guyton going to the Cowboys, even though they traded. Like you said, Brian Thomas going to the Jags, even though they traded out of their original spot. So I think we had the team fits correlated properly. It was just, some of the trades happened, but overall, I feel like you and I did a pretty good job on our mock draft. So I'm happy with the way that it went.
I think so too. I mean, considering we did no trades in our mock draft, I feel like there was a shockingly low amount of trades in the draft. I know that people were talking about the Patriots trading out from three. People were talking about guys trading up for quarterbacks, and we'll get into all this for sure. The Vikings traded up like one spot to get JJ. So I thought that we'd see a little bit more action. It seemed a little bit surprising. Kind of thought the Bears were going to trade back. Obviously, they did not. But I mean, right before the draft, mess of things happened as well. AJ Brown, like 15 minutes before the draft, signed a massive deal. So they re-signed AJ Brown, and a couple weeks ago, Devonta Smith. So their wide receivers are looking fantastic. In Philadelphia, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, both of their fifth-year options were picked up. So some things flew under the radar. But in today's episode, Alex and I are going to go through all the big storylines from the draft, give some of our best draft classes, which teams had the best draft, some of the worst, and just go through the big stories for the most part. So let's just hit the ground running right here. The draft started quarterback, and I think it was a little bit predictable. But then 14 picks in, only offensive players. We didn't get a defensive player selected until pick 15. The Colts took one. Never happened before. I mean, it just seemed like we were waiting and waiting for the time to come for somebody to take a defensive player.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like it took forever. A lot of mock drafts had the first defensive player off the board at number 8 with the Falcons taking Dallas Turner. I know we had them taking Quinyon Mitchell. That was all on me. But I mean, surprise the draft at number 8, and then what do you know? Defensive players just keep on falling down the board until we get to number 15 with Leatu Latu. Who would have thought he would have been the first defensive player off the board? Betting odds for that I think was at least plus 1,500. So if you bet Leatu Latu to be the first defensive player off the board, claps for you, brother. Claps for you. Enjoy your winnings. But yeah, no, crazy draft. I mean, we knew going into this was a very top heavy draft, very offensive heavy draft. A lot of these positions outside of wide receiver, you're very top heavy, and then the talent falls off pretty quickly when you get to the third, fourth round. And then, from that point on, you got a few, hidden gems like you do every year here or there. But for the most part, I mean, this is a very, first, second round centric draft. Those are going to be the names for the most part that you are going to recognize going forward throughout the next few NFL seasons. Outside of that, a lot of these names, like most drafts, you might not pick up. But, you know, definitely interesting to kind of see how the board fell. A lot of the trades going on to the second round as well. Very interesting trades going on, kind of trading back, acquiring more picks. Some questionable decisions going on. But we'll have to see how it all plays out in the long run.
Yeah, I feel like it just kind of it. I think it's like a little bit in part to do with offense has become so important. Not that it wasn't before, but like how much receivers are getting paid, how much quarterbacks are getting paid, how important quarterbacks are, and then as you said, like where these offensive players ranked in the draft, like they were just so good. Like these wide receivers, three of them, big studs, going to be number one wide receivers easily. So I think it played into both of those things a little bit. And then we saw a massive run on quarterbacks, like right off the bat. Obviously, Caleb's going to go one, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. But to see Bo Nix drafted so early, first time it's ever happened again, 6 quarterbacks within the first 12 picks. Obviously, these guys have a lot of potential. Some of the fits were a little bit surprising. I think it seemed early for all these guys. And then we didn't see another one till Spencer in the 3rd round, I believe. So it's kind of an interesting thing how offense and QBs went real early, and then we kind of got to run on defensive backs. But I mean, the quarterback thing I think is just one of the most shocking storylines. All 6 of those guys going so early in the draft.
Yeah, and actually, if I'm correct, we actually didn't even see um, Spencer Rattler go until the 5th round. Yeah, I'm looking right
Fifth,
here right
I was
now.
wrong on that. The
Uh,
fifth.
yeah, so we had 6 quarterbacks in the top 12 picks of the first round. First time in history that's ever happened. And then we go 4 rounds without a quarterback until pick 150 to the New Orleans Saints, where they finally select the 6th quarterback drafted, which is, of course, Spencer Rattler, who is, I believe, in one of my opinion, one of the steals of the draft. Falling all the way to the 5th round, obviously, your QB needy teams jumped at the gun very quickly with their first picks. So you obviously had a natural gap that fell there where, a lot of teams are looking for a backup or replacement, that's not really going to be in a starting type of role for a few years, more of a developmental player. So I see why he fell to the 5th, but at that point, 5th round pick, he's got a lot of intangibles that you would look for at the quarterback position. I think is a great steal. Saints made a great pick at that point. Definitely one of the steals of the draft. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people projected it. We got quarterback 1, 2, 3. A lot of mock drafts had JJ going early. We had the Vikings trading up in a lot of mock drafts. Again, referencing Bengal PFF, NFL Stock Exchange. We got a lot of people with the Vikings trading up to pick JJ. They stay put. They hold on to their assets with the other draft picks, and they let JJ fall to them, ending up only trading up one spot, swapping spots with the Jets to select JJ at 10th overall. So, absolutely, a lot of blockbuster moves going on here, and just a historic draft for quarterbacks in the 1st round here.
Yeah, I think both of us probably thought Spencer was going to go earlier. See the Gamecock memorabilia behind you. Go Cox.
Go Cox,
But
baby.
I guess it makes sense with the quarterbacks going so quickly like that. These quarterback needy teams, most of them at least, some of them not as much as others, but these teams really need a quarterback. They were willing to take him early, spend the 1st round pick, and then kind of got all filled up. Now he's going to sit behind Derek Carr. There's potential. He's got a lot of potential. So I thought he would have gone earlier, but I think just the way the board played out was interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think the Saints have had a lot of question marks surrounding Derek Carr since they traded for him. Definitely not the production they wanted out of him since acquiring him from the Raiders. So, it's always good to have a backup plan, especially somebody with a really high ceiling like Spencer Rattler. His floor is definitely could be a bit lower than some other prospects coming out of the draft, but you got to love the ceiling. You got to love, like I said, some of those intangibles. His athletic abilities might not match some of those as some of the other players coming out of the draft, but I mean, he's got a cannon of an arm. He can throw a deep ball, especially with a receiver like Chris Olave. You want to have somebody who can sling the rock like that and just get the ball to the receivers, and that's definitely something that Spencer Rattler can do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe it'll be a good thing for him to sit behind Derek for a year, maybe 2 years, and then maybe they give him a shot. Maybe he turns into, I. It's not a fair comparison, I guess. Jordan Love was a 1st round quarterback, but you've seen quarterbacks sit for a year or two and then be really good. I hope that's the case for him. We've seen how much potential he has watching him as a Gamecock. So I hope he does. A guy that he used to be on the same team with, the first pick of the draft, Caleb Williams. I think one of the most obvious things in the entire draft, Caleb Williams goes number one overall. The Bears hopefully get their quarterback for the next 15, 20 years. Hopefully they get the guy. There's a lot of conversation, I think, a couple months ago. A lot of stuff gets said, but people were trying to say maybe Caleb Williams isn't the guy. His college season didn't end how he would have how I expected it to. I mean, he kind of fell short. They had some big games. They ended up losing. Now he goes to the Bears. And the Bears are building around him. Thoughts on Caleb going to the Bears? I mean, just seemed inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It was inevitable, right? I mean, he is the most talented quarterback prospect coming out of this draft, and possibly the most talented QB prospect coming out the draft in the last 6, 7 years. A lot of the intangibles that you get, a lot of the playmaking ability that you get from Caleb compared to a lot of the other quarterbacks in this draft or a lot of recent drafts, is just unparalleled. If you have the number one pick and you're unshort quarterback, you have to go Caleb Williams here. Bears made the right decision. We knew it was the clear cut decision ever since they traded away Justin Fields. So, absolutely no shock here at number one.
Yeah, as we go through this, all these quarterbacks, I feel like there's so much potential. There's so many good things going for him. Caleb should be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, it should just be a given. But when you look back on history, a lot of these guys aren't going to turn out as good as we expected. That just seems to be the pattern. I saw something today about um, immediate grades after the draft. Josh Rosen, the Cardinals got an A+ right off the bat, and Patrick Mahomes, I believe they gave them a C for taking Patrick. So it's just so hard to predict. Number two, though, you get Jaden Daniels. I know you were back a couple months ago. Drake May was or Jaden. My bad. A couple months ago, Jaden Daniels was your guy. Flip flopped. You wanted Drake May. Now you got Jaden Daniels with the number two overall pick. I know you're not like bummed about it. What are your thoughts?
No. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, both are great prospects coming out of the draft. I think, in a year where you don't have Caleb Williams as the clear cut number one, you have 1A and 1B right there with Jaden Daniels and Drake May. I think Drake May has a higher ceiling as just your prototypical quarterback with the height, the frame, the arm strength. Jaden Daniels provides a lot more dynamic playmaking ability, though. He's much more of a Lamar Jackson type archetype, who I know is somebody you're very familiar with. Um, Definitely that playmaking ability, making plays without using your arm. So definitely when it comes to a Cliff Kingsbury type of offense, I think Jaden Daniels was going to be the better fit in the long run. So it makes perfect sense. A lot of mock drafts had this pick. Um, you know, Obviously our mock draft was a bit more of our choices, not a projective mock draft. So had it been a projective mock draft, Jaden Daniels probably would have fallen there along with most other mock drafts. Um, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's all about the scheme fit and the playmakers that you have surrounding you at quarterback, right? And at Washington with Terry McLaurin, you drafted Ben Sinnott, you got Zach Ertz now, you got Jahan Dotson, you have Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, you have playmakers around you on the offensive side of the ball that sets you up to be successful. Whereas with Drake May going to the Patriots, your offense is not necessarily as set up as well as somebody like Washington or, frankly, a lot of other offenses in the league, especially being the Vikings, which we can get to later with JJ McCarthy. So, I think in the grand scheme of things, the quarterback that is going to be most successful coming out of the draft is the one that's in the better position. And when we compare the Patriots position to the Commanders, I believe the Commanders are in a more quarterback friendly and advantageous position overall, which is why I believe that Jaden Daniels will still be plenty successful with the Commanders. Very excited to have him on the team. And I actually watched a GQ segment on him earlier on what he eats in a day. His diet is looking healthy.
Ooh,
Besides
that's
the honey
good.
buns, can't blame the man. He loves his honey buns. You can ask Emily. I myself am a honey buns man. For my birthday cake a few years ago, I just had them buy a bunch of honey buns and use icing to stick it all together, and we just made one big birthday cake out of honey buns. Delicious. I love honey buns. Jaden Daniels, that's my guy. I'm ride or die for Jaden Daniels. That's my boy.
Sounds like you guys are going to be besties.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely.
is that going to be the first Commanders jersey that you purchase?
It will not. It will not. I will not buy a jersey until we change our name. I'll buy shirts. I'll buy the little logo polos and everything. I can't buy a jersey. I got the Sean Taylor jersey right here. RIP. That's the GOAT. That I think I'm good on jerseys for right now. But absolutely, you have my 100% dedication and support.
Well, hopefully they come up with something new, and then that'll encourage you to buy a
Red
new
Wolves.
jersey.
Just buy the name the Red Wolves and we'll be good.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not really a big fan of either of them, but I feel like I would get used to either of them. You're right though. The QB situation. I mean, we saw last year with Bryce Young, drafted right off the bat. Not a good situation, and it was just not a good year at all. This year, the Bears have the first pick, but it was via the Panthers, so it wasn't that they were the worst team in the league. And you saw Eberflus's culture, I think, started to get implemented, and people were starting to buy in more as the year went on. They got better as the year went on. They have a pretty solid defense and added some pieces this offseason. I think that Caleb is going to be in a good position, and I think Jaden is going to be in a good position when we're looking at the entire team. Let's talk about the Washington Commanders draft, though, while we're on them. Luke McCaffrey, that could be a stud pick. Pick 100 later in the round. I know he wasn't like as good as Christian coming out of school, but like to have a guy like that on your team. And then obviously you get Johnny Newton in the second round. What are your thoughts on the entire draft?
No, I mean, it was a good draft. I can't be mad about it, right? Adam Peters came in, he did his thing, he wheeled, he dealed, he got some extra draft picks, especially in the second round. I know going into it, we had 6 picks in the top 100. We ended with 6 picks in the top 100. However, we went from having 3 third-round picks to 3 second-round picks, so we upgraded a little bit. Obviously, first overall pick, we're going QB Jaden Daniels. No surprise there. Happy with that. We got our QB of the future. With pick 36, going Johnny Newton, like you stated. We have Deron Payne under contract for another 3 years, and Jonathan Allen, who Adam Peters was very adamant on from the beginning. Hey, this is a culture guy. This is somebody who we are going to have on our team to help set the culture going forward for years and years to come. He's under contract for another 2 years. Cooper DeJean was on the board. Kool-Aid McKinstry was on the board. Why are we taking Johnny Newton? What 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 are we doing here? I don't know. I don't know. Hey, granted, round one prospect, great
Oh yeah,
player,
for sure, for
super
sure.
excited. You know, he shows flashes of that Aaron Donald type, right? A little bit undersized, very powerful, great pass rusher at DT, 3 down defensive tackle. I love all of that, but what does that mean for the players that we just paid? So I'm a little bit confused on that. I'm a little bit weary on that. I'm a little bit confused on that. That's all right. Great player overall. Whatever. Look past it. I'm good. I'll trust in AP until he proves me wrong. I'm sure he has a plan. At pick 40, who is still available? Cooper DeJean, my number 2 DB coming out of this draft behind Quinyon Mitchell.
You had him going in the middle of our mock draft.
I did. I had him right in the middle of the first round, and he falls to us at number 40. We need DBs. We have Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St. Juste, whose contract is about to expire, and then who? And then who?
It seemed like the obvious
Quan
pick right
Quan
there
Martin's
too.
playing safety, and he's playing slot corner. Who do we have at DP? Who? We got Jeremy Chin for strong safety. Who do we have at DP? I don't know. So what do? We trade with a divisional rival the Philadelphia Eagles and allow them to get Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Great prospect. He can go anywhere in the secondary that you need him to go. And we let him go to the division rival, who had just picked Quinyon Mitchell. So now they have two of my top 3 DBs in the draft. They've selected them. Didn't even have to trade up a whole lot. They got him in the second round. And then we traded back and we got 50 and 53. So great. We got another second round pick. We got Mike Sainristil, who, granted, all I've heard about him is positive feedback. I actually saw a tweet earlier from his at used to be Drake May for MVP, but now I think it's like Jay Daniels for MVP. His name is Brandon. He's a huge commies guy on Twitter X. Posted something saying that we got Sauce Gardner 2.0. I'll wait to see it, but from the highlights, he's a dog. I'm not mad about it. But if you look on PFF, ESPN Big Board, we went from DB3 to DB7. And then on top of that, we picked up Ben Sinnott, who I'm not mad about. We definitely need tight end. I'm definitely happy about that. We ended up getting an offensive tackle with Brandon Coleman out of TCU, another dog player. Luke McCaffrey with the last pick of the third round, 100th pick overall. Christian McCaffrey, if he's anything like his brother, hey, I'm happy with it. I'm good. Let's go. Then we got a Jordan McGee out of Temple, linebacker. Dominique Hampton out of UW. And then we got Javante Jean-Baptiste out of Notre Dame, an edge rusher. Finally getting an edge rusher in the 7th round. I would have liked to see one go a little bit earlier, but I think the way that the board fell, we were losing out on a lot of these like key players at certain positions that we needed. So, I think the way that the board fell, we got the picks where we needed them. A lot of times we were just getting best player available. So overall, I think I'm okay with the way that the draft fell.
No, I mean, I've heard the name Mike Sanderstill because I can just hear the announcer saying his name. I feel like whenever you watched a Michigan name, his name popped up so much. So it's got to be a pretty good pick, but I understand like where the frustration comes from when you got Kool-Aid and Cooper DeJean. I know how much you liked Cooper DeJean, and for both of them to be within grasp, then not get either of them, especially that being a position of need, I understand where the frustration could come, and especially with how much depth you have at DT. I feel like that's like the thing about the draft. Some teams go best player available, some teams go for the fit, and sometimes it alternates. So I could see where I could easily see why you would feel like that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be too upset, right? I mean, we still got the position, and I'm not doubting Mike Sanders still at all. I think he's going to be a dog. I think he'll be a great player. It's just, not who I went in the draft necessarily expecting to get, and especially at that position in the draft, not who I would have personally selected. But, um, you know, until Josh Harris proves me wrong, I will trust in him. He's able to run a successful sports franchise and other, sports. So until he proves me wrong, I will trust in Josh Harris and I will trust in AP. Adam Peters, Alex Putnam, AP dogs. We got this, brother. We got this.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Maybe this is the year that, I mean, it's only going to be a second year. Maybe Manuel Forbes steps up this year, and then we just forget that those guys are on the board and those guys are available, and Manuel
You'd love
Forbes
to think
just
that, right?
does what we thought he could do. But I don't know.
That'd be a great reality. We'll see if
Optimistic.
that
Optimistic
happens.
thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other thoughts on the Commanders? Commanders
No, I
draft.
mean, I think PFF gave it an A grade. I would agree with it. I think personally I would have done some things differently, but there's probably a reason why I'm not an NFL GM, right? So, I trust in the process. I think we got a lot of the positions that we needed. We got better in a lot of areas. So, just excited to see how that translate into the wins and loss record next season. So, we'll see how it translates onto the field, but on paper, everything seems good so far. So can't complain too much.
Yeah, I think Jaden's going to be fun to watch. I think it'll be fun to see how this plays out. But I think he has potential to be good right off the bat. And I think, like you said before, I think that they've surrounded him with a good situation. He's got good weapons. It's not like he's going to a poverty franchise at this point. So I think it'll be fun to see. I think there's a lot of potential there. New OC, like you talked about earlier. So it's going to be fun to watch. After that,
Absolutely.
obviously Drake May to the Patriots. I think that that was about inevitable unless the Patriots were to have traded. Talks were happening, but nothing came of that. And then Marvin Harrison. Cardinals had 7 picks in the top 90, which I think is absolutely wild. Marvin Harrison goes to the Cardinals. Kyler gets a weapon. I think that's going to be huge for both of them. We're going to see if Kyler is really a top 10, top 7 quarterback in the NFL, or maybe the Cardinals need to look and find something else. Joe Alt, obviously, just like our
Yeah.
mock draft, we were hitting it at this. This was our stride right here. Joe Alt goes to the Chargers.
Yeah. Absolutely. With the Chargers and the Cardinals right here. I mean, like you were saying, Cardinals, you want to surround your quarterback that you just signed to an extension with weapons. You give him Marvin Harrison on the offensive side. At pick 4, you give him Darius Robinson on the defensive side. An edge rusher who can really slide inside, especially on obvious pass rushing downs. With pick 27 in the first round, you get Max Melton, an athletic freak at DB at second round with the 43rd pick. And then you get Trey Benson, one of the top 3 running backs coming out of the draft, third round at pick 66. You get some OT help out of Illinois at 71 with Isaiah Adams. You get some tight end help with Tip Riemann. Uh, you get edge with Xavier Thomas out of Clemson with 138. And Jaden Davis out of Miami with the last pick, 226, cornerback out of Miami. So, I mean, you had a you know, a copious amount of picks in this draft. And I feel like you got some good players overall. PFF gave them a B plus. Wouldn't be too far off on their grade. I think, they maximized on a lot of their grades, make sure that they went BPA on a lot of these picks. So, I would agree with that.
Next up, we have the Giants taking Malik Neighbors. This one was a little bit surprising. I think a lot of people had Malik Neighbors mocked to the Giants, but there's also a little buzz out there. Should the Giants go QB? Daniel Jones has a couple more years on his contract. They just paid him big money. What should they do? Obviously, they go wide receiver here. And Malik Neighbors trending. It's tough to tell because all this stuff's cut up, but all the things that I saw, he did not look very excited after getting drafted by the Giants. When he came up, I think he got out of the back of a van when he pulled up to the Giants facility. Like I'm sure it was a long night too. So, it's tough to tell, but it looked like he was just not happy to be there. I saw the best thing I've seen all week probably is a meme, and it was a picture of Antonio Brown when he was running off the field when he was a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. They're playing the Jets. They're losing 24-20. Antonio Brown's got his shirt off. He's in the end zone waving to everybody. And somebody said, this is going to be Malik Neighbors after the first practice with Daniel Jones. They asked him about Daniel Jones in an interview with Malik Neighbors, and he had like nothing to say. I feel like normally
He
they
had no
hype
idea
those
who
guys
Daniel
up.
Jones was. Because I
It just
remember, I
wasn't a
mean,
good look.
you're more plugged in on this stuff than I am, and I even saw that, and it was like, I don't think some people realize how out of tune some of these college players are with the NFL. Like they don't pay attention to the NFL; they just pay attention to what they have going on at the college level. It's like, I don't know if I buy that. You're telling me
Yeah.
that as a college player who is a projected first round pick in the NFL, you're not paying any attention to what's going on at the NFL, especially
Oh,
after the season's over and you're just training and you're not paying attention to where you think you might get drafted. You have
no,
no idea who the
exactly.
starting quarterbacks are in the NFL. Like, I don't believe that for a second. The AB comparison is hilarious to me because obviously the Giants is a division rival. I would love to see the implosion from them. But I think overall, Malik Neighbors is the obvious, clear best pick there. I mean, he has a lot of explosive traits. Um, draw a lot of comparisons from OBJ, which obviously he had great success in New York with the Giants. So you really can't go wrong with the pick. Don't fault the Giants at all for taking the pick. I mean, I think the only other thing you look at is maybe offensive tackle. You look at sliding Evan Neal back on the inside because he hasn't been too successful on the outside. But, you really can't fault the Giants for going with Malik Neighbors at number 6 after Joe Alt goes off the board at number 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think last season the big thing is the Giants have no weapons. Now they lose Saquon. It's just it's what had to happen, and I feel like that might have been in our mock draft too. I don't have it up right now, but I feel like it very well might have been.
We did have Malik to the Giants. Yep.
Very good, very good.
That
That's
was
another
my
one right.
pick. I got it. I got it, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Don't
Next
worry. It's
up,
all going to go downhill from here.
yeah,
Because you
after
got Joe
this,
Alt to the Chargers. I had Malik to the Giants. Then it's all downhill from there.
yeah, it kind of fell apart after that. So I guess we'll
It
stop
did.
referencing the mock draft at this point.
We'll quit while we're ahead.
Yeah, exactly. One of the biggest stories, probably the biggest story from the draft, has to be talked about. Michael Penix goes to the Atlanta Falcons. So surprising. A top 10 pick. Falcons signed Kirk Cousins to an absolutely massive deal. He's coming off the ACL. He's still playing great football. He was playing fantastic with the Vikings before he got injured. You expect him to come back, recover fully. With the amount of money that they paid him, they have to expect him to come back and to play. And they have a good team. That their biggest problem has been the quarterback situation. They've drafted skill positions extremely high. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. They have the weapons. Their defense isn't awful. Their defense isn't awful. They have needed defensive back, but they could have gone defensive back there. They could have gone so many things there that would have been so helpful to their team. But they go Michael Penix, a quarterback that I hate to say it because he's fully healthy now, but he has had injury issues. He's out of these top guys. He's the oldest quarterback out of all of them. You have to expect at the minimum with the guarantees Kirk has, he's going to sit 2 years behind Kirk Cousins. I expect Kirk to come back and be a stud and to play. So I'm expecting him to sit for these seasons. We've seen it work out with guys like Jordan Love, but I think this is so different though. They just brought Kirk in. It's not like Kirk's been there the whole time. He's just going to sit behind them and learn. Like they're both coming in right off the bat. So no wonder Kirk wasn't super excited about this happening. Him finding out right at the time, right when they're making this pick, like what's happening right now? What are the Falcons doing?
I, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, absolutely, you're right. They bring Kirk in. They've got 100 million guaranteed. I believe the contract total is 160 million on a 4-year deal. Then they bring Penix in the first round, which is going to be a 5-year contract, assuming that they pick up the 5th-year option. I don't understand the concept of it. Obviously, Kirk has some injury risk when it comes to him, but so does Penix. It's also not like Penix is JJ McCarthy at 21 years old. Penix is 24 years old. He's an old quarterback when it comes to draft terms. I don't really understand the pick outside of the thought that, you're not necessarily drafting to win now, you're drafting to win in 2, 3, 4 years from now. Then why do you sign Kirk Cousins to a $160 million contract? I don't get it. What's the thought process here? Are you trying to win now or are you trying to win later? What are you doing? You got to make up your mind. I saw a 15-second clip of Arthur Blank coming into the Falcons war room and grilling the GM. And it's like,
Oh,
what are you doing? And it's just the GM standing there trying to explain himself. It's like, I don't understand what you're doing. You take a tight end in the top 5, which is already enough of a question mark, especially when you don't incorporate him into the offense. Then you take a running back in the top 10, which you don't necessarily do a good job incorporating into the offense. And then you take a quarterback after you just signed a quarterback to a $160 million contract. It's like, what are you doing? Arthur Blank needs to get his staff straight because overall PFF, I believe, graded the Falcons draft as a B minus, a C plus, something like that. Sorry, a C minus, Horrific, terrible. Why do you take Penix? You could have gotten an edge rush of the future with Dallas Turner. You could have gotten a cornerback of the future like Quinyon Mitchell to run alongside AJ Terrell like I had projected. You could have helped my mock draft, but instead you help nobody but yourself in 3 years from now by taking Michael Penix. I don't understand.
And brother, remember last season when Lamar did not get the did not get his long-term deal? He was out there, 2 first-round picks could have been traded, and the massive contract, and they could have had Lamar Jackson. Now they have Kirk Cousins, massive contract, and they spent a first-round pick on Michael Penix that's going to sit on the bench. They were one of the teams that famously came out and said, "We don't want Lamar," which I'm glad. I don't want any of those teams to have Lamar, but just all you're right. Like I think that's probably the best way to put it because the argument out there is like the Falcons haven't had a great quarterback since Matt Ryan, so now they're good till I don't know 2030, let's say 2029, 5 year contract. But it just doesn't make sense because you're going to get like maybe 1-2 years out of him, and then you're going to have to out of Penix, and then you're going to have to make a decision. Are you going to sign him to another deal, or are you going to let him go after playing for a season or two, spending a first round draft pick on him? Like it just doesn't make sense. It is this for the future? Is this for now? Like I don't have any thoughts in my mind. I don't understand in my mind how you can justify this decision.
I don't think you can. I think it's one of those decisions that's really going to make or break your position, right? So, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. If Kirk gets injured in week 5 and Michael Penix comes in and leads them to the playoffs, then great, you save your job. But outside of that type of situation, I really don't see how you salvage your career at this point. I mean, some of these just boneheaded decisions, just, I mean, off the wall picks with the first round, which, you know, obviously are very valuable picks. It's just, really doesn't make any sense to me. I really don't have any words for the Falcons other than just why? Where where's the crack? You need to lay off. As Stephen A said, lay off the weeds.
No, it doesn't make sense. I don't think that it's the same as the Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers situation. I think it's far different, and it just makes no sense. I think that that was the biggest the biggest question mark in the draft. The fit doesn't feel right. They have so many issues that they need help with. They have so many positions of need, and to go quarterback after signing Kirk Cousins just doesn't make sense. Enough of that. That's too much. That's too much. They are. I don't see how this turns out good. But after that, the Bears get to pick again, which this works out great for the Bears because another quarterback's taken off the board. The Bears aren't going quarterback. They get Rome Odunze, which surprised me. I thought Bears are going to trade back here, get some more picks. They only had 4 picks going into it at this point. But no, they could have gone on offensive tackle, offensive line, try to help Caleb a little bit. They help him maybe even more with Rome Odunze. Now they got Keenan Allen this season from a trade from the Chargers. DJ Moore they got last season. He had a great season this past year. DeAndre Swift they signed in the offseason, and Cole Kmet. The offense is absolutely loaded. I mean, Caleb he should be, I don't know what the odds are, but he should by far be offensive player of the year. I'm sure the odds are skewed massively, just like they were for him to be the first pick overall.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I would assume that with the weapons that you've surrounded him with, granted, you still have Cole Kmet, so obviously you got DJ Moore with the trade with the Panthers from last season. You got Keenan Allen in the offseason. You got Rome Odunze, who is literally just going to be your long-term Keenan Allen replacement, right? Because he's getting a bit up there in age. He's probably going to be on the come down, but you have a Roma Dunze who is going to be in very easy fill in, a very easy replacement. I mean, you are surrounding Caleb Williams with one of the best situations possible, if not for the Vikings, who have potentially a historically great opportunity for a quarterback to come in through the draft. But I mean, outside of their offensive line, who hands up, I really don't, I don't have a lot of great information on. I mean, at you got DeAndre Swift in the offseason, so you got a good, solid running back. You have Caleb Williams, the number one pick overall, the top QB prospect coming out of the draft, arguably in the last decade. And then you have three great wide receivers, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and then one of the top three potentially generational prospects coming out of the draft. I mean, how can you really argue with this? Chicago Bears, PFF gave it a grade. Really can't help but agree with it. They also got Kieran Amagaji out of Yale in the third round, who's a really good tackle prospect. They drafted a punter out of Iowa, which is apparently the second highest punter drafted in the last decade. Apparently, he's really good.
Because Iowa's
And then they got
offense was
Austin
awful.
Booker. Yeah, no, definitely not. And then they got Austin Booker, edge rusher out of Kansas in the fifth round. So considering that they only had 5 picks, they definitely maximized their picks. So really can't fault them at all.
Next up, another quarterback taken off the board. I believe we had this pick right. The Vikings take J.J. McCarthy. To me, feels like a fantastic pick. I think the fit is going to be really good. J.J. at Michigan didn't have to do a whole lot. He had a lot of weapons around him, and he had a great defense. Here, he's got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, both stud wide receivers. They just upgraded the running back position, getting Aaron Jones. I think the fit's perfect. What do you think about this fit? And what do you think about the Vikings taking J.J. McCarthy at 10?
No, absolutely. You're getting a winner, somebody that's a proven winner, somebody that can be a playmaker in crunch time, and you're putting them with the one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. So, I really don't see how the pick goes wrong here. You saved your pick. You didn't trade up. You didn't, you know, give up valuable assets in order to go get your guy. You stuck, you pick, and you got your guy at number 10. You only had to trade up one spot, didn't give up nearly as many assets. So overall, I agree with the Vikings pick here. You want to make sure you get your guy without giving up too much. So, I think this was a good move, especially considering how the board fell. And with Michael Penix going at 8, you really kind of got to make sure that you secure your guy there. So I agree with that pick.
Yeah, I think earlier in the draft process, he was going to be going later. Then he kind of worked his way up. Now, pick 10, I think that's really good for him. I think that, like you said, winner, that's just the best way to define him. And I think he's going to be good. It's just like Caleb fits good with the Bears. Jaden fits good with the Commanders. I don't know about the Drake May fit yet. I think the Patriots have some problems, but this one just feels right. And I think it's going to be fun to watch him. He's not going to be asked to do too much, and I think he'll be able to ease his way in a little bit. Another team,
Agreed.
though, that took a quarterback, not surprising because they needed a quarterback, but given how quick the quarterbacks were going off the board and who was available, it is surprising. Bo Nix to the Broncos. You have to assume that Sean Payton has a plan. You have to assume that Sean Payton is psyched about this pick. He could have potentially fallen to the second, maybe the third round. Spencer fell way down the board. But they go ahead and they get their guy early. 6 quarterback off the draft, 12 picks. Absolutely wild. What do you think about this? Because I believe he's an older guy, right? Compared to the other ones, at least 23, 24.
Yeah, definitely is an older guy. Obviously had a few years at Auburn, transferred to Oregon, had the COVID year and everything. So definitely was around for a good while. He is currently just over 24 years old. So definitely an older prospect, not the old, he might actually be the oldest, but Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler, right around that same age. Um, but I think it's actually really a great fit in the grand scheme of things. And, there were a handful of mock drafts that had this projected pick going. Bo Nix is a great system quarterback. If you put him in a system where he is meant to thrive, he will thrive. That's a lot of what you saw at Oregon. A lot of shorter passes. He wasn't necessarily asked to throw the ball deep. He was meant to get it into his playmakers' hands and let them make plays, let them do what they do. And I believe that with Sean Payton as the head coach there in Denver, they will ask him to do a lot of the same things. Just get the ball in the playmakers' hands, let them do what they do. That's why they selected Troy Franklin in the 4th round with a 102nd pick. That's why they got Audric Estime out of Notre Dame in the 5th round with the 147th pick. Shout out PFF NFL Stock Exchange. That was their steal of the draft. They're going to win the Super Bowl according to them now. Audric Esme, just a big bruiser back. But no, I think Bo Nix is definitely the type where he follows the coach's lead, and with somebody like Sean Payton there to lead the way, I think that that can be a really good fit. And especially again, like I was just saying, the way that the QB board fell, at that point, you just got to go. You got to get your guy. You can't risk your job. You can't risk the franchise. You can't risk a few more seasons without having your franchise quarterback. So at this point, just use the first round pick, go there, get your guy, and just make sure you're secured at the most valuable position in all of sports.
And even though that's the most valuable position, I feel like we keep coming back to Sean Payton. We know that he can do it. Drew Brees wasn't like, he wasn't a Patrick Mahomes. He was a guy that was accurate. He made the right throws, and they were able to get it done. They had good defense. So I think he's probably thinking the same kind of path here. And I think that that's kind of Sean Payton is the most important thing in this situation.
Absolutely.
This
Yeah.
is it for him right here. I think if he doesn't get this right with the Broncos and Bo Nix isn't a stud, then I don't know what happens next for Sean Payton. The Broncos gave up draft picks to get Sean Payton. They've put a lot of investment, a lot of stock into Sean, and this is the time right now. He got his guy, so it'd be interesting to see what happens. I don't expect it to be, crazy year one, but give him a
Yeah, but
year
no,
or
you,
two,
you,
and
you you get an even record, close to even, just show some good improvement and just show some promise out of Bo Nix, and I think you're good.
yeah, I think that there's potential there. It'll be
Yeah,
fun to see what happens, but just to see those
absolutely.
guys go so early, you know,
Hmm.
it was fun though. It was fun though. It was good
Historic.
for historic. It was a historic night. It was good for teams like the Ravens. The Ravens picking 30th. Obviously, don't need a quarterback, so it's good that all these quarterbacks are going. And the Ravens need a little bit of help on defense. They need a little bit of help on O line. O line went pretty quick. Offensive tackles were taken off the board. So I didn't realize it was that high of a priority, but Eric DeCosta came out of the press conference after night one saying it was between offensive tackle and cornerback. Ravens get Nate Wiggins at 30. He slid farther than what we had him in our mock draft. We had him a lot earlier. I remember watching his combine, seeing how fast he was, and that was the thing that stuck with me. I hadn't really watched him play a whole lot. You probably know a lot better. Him being from Clemson, us being South Carolina fans. But I'm pretty happy with this pick. I think the biggest concern is people are talking about, is he going to be big enough? Like, is he going to be able to tackle? But overall, I feel like is pretty good. I mean, I think our secondary is going to be monstrous if this guy performs like we expect him to.
No, absolutely. I think, in our mock draft, we had him going 25 to the Green Bay Packers. He falls a bit here, goes 30 to the Ravens. So, we weren't too far off. Overall, great size, great speed. Some of the concerns with him is the arm length. The arm length doesn't necessarily match the height with him. And also just the size, the frame. He's a little bit frail for a corner. Makes you a bit concerned about him being a number one lockdown corner, especially when it comes to press coverage. But I think if he's able to put on a few pounds, able to just kind of, work with his hands a little bit better, just get a little bit, um, you know, physical in that department, he's going to be able to lock down some of these wide receiver ones and really be a strong, cornerback defender. Overall, I think it's a great pick. He's got a lot of upside coming out of the draft. Easily can be the, CB1 coming out if Quinion, Terrion don't end up playing out quite like they should. So overall, I think it's a great pick. Really going BPA there, best player available. When it comes to OT, you got Graham Barton going right before. You got Amarius Mims, Troy Fautanu, Fuaga, JC Latham, Fashanu, Alt. They're all off the board. When you get to that point in the draft, late round one, go BPA for a position of need. You get Nate Wiggins. Can't really fault them for the pick.
Yeah, I think I'm happy with it overall. You wonder if, like, in the future, Brandon Stevens needs to be re signed. He's going to want a big deal. Maybe it's a play towards the future when you're talking about guys like that. Marlon Humphrey's making a lot of money and he's not getting any younger. He's my favorite, though, so I don't want him to go, but it, that stuff just happens. Obviously, the Ravens were looking for some help on the O line as well. Like you said, some of those guys were going off the board quick. They addressed it in the second round. Washington offensive tackle Roger Rosengarten. Never heard of him. Not sure. I'm expecting him to be good. I have a feeling he's going to be a
Good
starter.
play. I mean, he made it to the national championship, right? So he's got to be able to protect his quarterback pretty well.
You would think. I hope so. I hope so. And Penn State linebacker, I don't know how to say his name. Adisa Isaac, maybe.
Adisa
And
Isaac, you got it spot on. He was much more productive than Chop Robinson, who was a first round pick coming out of this draft. So you would like to think that the numbers in college, translate to the numbers in the NFL. We'll see how that goes. But overall in the third round, I think that's a really solid pick. You got Tez Walker there in the fourth. Was projected to be potentially a first, maybe second round pick, and Senior Bowl performance wasn't that great. Had a lot of drops. You obviously had him not being eligible for like half the season after transferring to North Carolina. So he falls in the draft some, but overall get a great athletic prospect there at receiver. TJ Tampa, in my opinion, one of the better corners, better DBs in the draft, fall into the fourth round at pick 130. I think him along with Nate Wiggins, one of those is going to pan out. On top of that, you're getting a little bit more offensive line help with Nick Samak out of Michigan State, getting Devin Leary out of Kentucky. Can't really comment on that one. Not really sure why you're taking a QB in the sixth round, but you're getting a little bit more DB help there with Sanusi Kane out of Purdue. So overall, I would give the Ravens a really good draft grade overall. PFF gives them an A minus. I wouldn't be too far off of that grade. I think, especially with your first five picks all throughout the fourth round, you made some really good value picks in those spots.
yeah, I think when I look at the draft, like it's exactly what we needed. Needed offensive line help. We needed an edge rusher. We wanted another wide receiver to help out Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers. We got exactly that. I think that overall the draft was really good. The one thing Ravens Twitter had a problem with was Devin Leary. Why are the Ravens drafting a quarterback pick 218? We don't need a quarterback. We have backups. Like, where's this guy gonna? Is this guy even gonna make the roster? So kind of almost, I hate to say it, it kind of almost feels like a waste of a pick. I think that the Ravens have been super good at drafting and evaluating talent, but this one just, it's a little bit of a head scratcher for me. But overall, I think I'm pretty happy with what we did. I think it's going to be fun to watch. And Tez Walker, I think, is going to be really good. I didn't realize who that was at first, and then I saw that that was the guy. I think we played, South Carolina played North Carolina week one. They were talking about him not
First
being
game
able
of
to
the season.
play. So I'm excited about that. I was hoping for Lad McConkey, or I was hoping for Xavier Legette. Xavier Legette, though,
You're
somehow
not
he
getting
stuck
any
into
of
the
those
first
guys in the
round.
fourth round. In the fourth round, absolutely. But yeah, Leggett going in the first round is huge.
That's crazy. I mean, I thought Ravens might go wide receiver round two, but I think we just addressed all the needs we needed to, and then hit wide receiver round four perfectly fine. Xavier Leggett did sneak in at the end of the first round. The Panthers had pick 33, traded with the Bills to get back into the first round. The Bills didn't have a first round pick at this point, and they get Xavier Leggett. Bryce Young gets another weapon. He gets to stay close to South Carolina. I think this could be a great fit. Big body. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. What do you think about this?
No, absolutely. Low moving costs, man. You're just going from Columbia up to Charlotte. It's only like an hour, 15-minute drive. So, we love to see that. Um, Also, there was a lot of talk about an interview with uh, Xavier Leggett and
Oh
him
yeah.
saying that if the Panthers had the 33rd pick and he was still available, that they were going to pick him. And I guess he kind of spilled the beans in an interview, and whether or not that was going to sway some certain teams to make sure that they picked him before the Panthers, I'm not sure. I'm sure the Panthers kind of felt the pressure, especially at that point after kind of denying those allegations. They wanted to make sure that they went up, got their guy, trade up into the first round, especially over the Bills, who is a wide receiver needy team, to make sure that they get their guy of the future, which really can't blame them. Panthers at this point are almost putting together like an all-time Gamecocks team. I mean, they got J.C. Horn. They just signed Jadeveon Clowney in the offseason, getting Xavier Leggett with the first pick in the draft for them. So, I mean, they're really trying to just put together an all Gamecocks, all SEC team. They got Bryce Young there. So we kind of love to see it. You gotta root for them as an underdog this year, but overall, I think the Panthers grade, wasn't necessarily the best, but I do respect the fact that they went up. They wanted to get their guy. They went up and got him. They got Jonathan Brooks in the second round, first running back off of the board. Like I had stated in our prospects podcast, definitely one of the more promising running backs, but coming off that ACL injury, you kind of wonder how he is. They got Traven Wallace, a linebacker out of Kentucky, in the third round. Then you got JT Sanders that they picked up in the fourth round at pick 101. He, I believe, was the second ranked tight end prospect coming out of Texas, according to PFF, but ends up falling to the fourth round, obviously falling behind people such as Ben Sinnott, who went to Washington. But he ends up falling to the fourth round. And then you pick up a corner, defensive lineman, and another linebacker coming out of Michigan with Michael Barrett. So overall, I would give the Panthers a solid grade. PFF gave them a C, maybe give them a C plus, B minus. I don't think it was anything crazy. I think they got some of the positions of need. Um, were there some reaches? Probably. But they wanted to make sure they covered their bases, got some of the people that they needed, improved in positions where, it was obviously necessary, and they can kind of reevaluate going into this season. Again, you want to give Bryce Young those weapons. You want to give him the best chance of success, especially because you really did not set him up for that at all last year. You set him up for just absolute failure.
No, and like you said at the beginning, I saw some Xavier Leggett press conference from him getting into the Panthers, and they were asking him questions. His accent is just fantastic. The way he talks,
That
nobody like it.
greatest accent I've ever heard. That is the most southern country, just it's low country accent right there. I mean, you can hardly understand anything he's saying. Everything is a runoff sentence, but good God, I love it. It is just like injecting adrenaline into my veins. That gets me so hyped up. I'm just ready to go watch him drop like, a 3 touchdown, 200-yard game. He is going to be one of my picks in fantasy. He's going to be like one of those late round sleeper picks all of my fantasy leagues. I cannot wait for it.
You'll just stash him on your bench all season, even if he plays bad. Like you just
Oh,
can't
just
drop him.
waiting.
You got to keep
Just
him. Yeah,
just
it'll
waiting.
come. It'll come.
Just wait. He'll be lurking on the bench, no doubt.
Oh yeah, for sure. Any other teams that you think would be good to discuss before we send it off? Good,
Yeah,
bad.
man,
What do you think?
just real quick, I got two other teams. I got a divisional rival with the Cowboys here. Especially with how little they did in the offseason, this was going to be a really big draft for them, right? So in the first round, they end up picking Tyler Guyton. Kind of called that one there, even though they traded. I knew that was a Cowboys type of guy, really big frame, just prototypical offensive lineman. He's just going to need a lot of work. But obviously, the Cowboys have proven that they're a franchise that can develop offensive linemen really well and just create those guys that are going to stick around for a long time. I think it's, you know, not necessarily a win now pick, but a hey, let's make sure that we're continuing to progress in the future type of pick. I think it's a valuable pick at, in the first round. Second round, they get Marshawn Nealon. I think he was kind of one of the sleepers in the draft coming out of Western Michigan, not necessarily a big school by any means, but really strong player, really strong prospect. Third round, they get Cooper Beebe out of Kansas State, offensive lineman. Obviously, they lost like more than half their offensive line in the offseason. So really important to pick up some guys there. And then as we look down the board, you get another tackle in the seventh round. You get a wide receiver out of Southeast Missouri State. Couldn't tell you if I've ever heard of that college before.
Yeah.
But you get some DB help. You get Maurice Liufau out of Notre Dame in the third round. So PFF gives it a B minus. I think their first three picks are good. First, second, third round picks. You get the late third round, and you kind of lost me. So kind of a B minus there for the Cowboys. Again, I think they got, they started off strong. Hand up, I got a full-time job, can't necessarily research all these prospects, so I can't necessarily speak on all of them. but from what I've heard of the first three. I think the first three picks are good. After that, you kind of lost me on that. The only other team that I really want to speak on is going to be the Steelers, and I really think that they had a underrated draft. I think that it was really strong for them. They got Troy Fautanu, who kind of fell in the draft. I thought that he was a really good prospect. They pick him up at 20 in our mock draft. We had him going at 18 to the Bengals, so we really weren't too far off. But they addressed the offensive line need there. I know a lot of mock drafts had Amarius Mims going to them, so they still get the same position, just different player. Second round, they go right back to the offensive line with Zach Frazier, who I think is one of the best interior offensive linemen, if not the best interior offensive lineman coming out of the draft this year out of West Virginia. Uh, Third round pick, you go Roman Wilson, who's just a great route runner, great hands, coming out of Michigan, national champion. Uh, a later third round pick, you got Peyton Wilson, who I believe, in my opinion, is the most athletic linebacker coming out of the draft this year. A lot of people have Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M as the most athletic. I have Peyton Wilson. There's obviously some injury history there. However, I think the Steelers already have a really strong defensive front with their defensive line and the linebacking core. So, even if Peyton Wilson can't necessarily be a full-time linebacker, I think he can still have a great role there. Mason McCormick coming out of South Dakota State. He's an offensive lineman as well. He was one of my sleepers in the draft this year. They picked him up in the fourth round, and then they ended up getting a defensive lineman out of Iowa in the sixth and a cornerback, Ryan Watts, out of Texas in the sixth as well. Overall, I think the Steelers had a really good grade. PFF gives them an A plus. I give them an A plus as well. I really agree with their grades. I think that especially first through the fourth round picks, the first five picks that they had, excellent picks, a lot of great value at the positions that they needed as well.
Yeah, I mean that's not what I want to hear. Obviously, I want the Steelers to have a bad draft. Bengals get Mims like we thought could go to the Steelers.
Kind of
Could
a
be a really
banger
good
though.
pick for
Sorry.
them. So it's unfortunate for me, but I mean I think you're right when you go through it. It looks real good right now. I mean, like I said in the other episode, it'll be interesting to see how they address the offensive line. Like, are they going to start these guys right away? Are they going to sit them? Like last year, they drafted a guy in the first round. They sit him for a while. They probably should have played him a little earlier, but the offense was all out of wax last year for the Steelers. So who knows? New OC, Arthur Smith. Is that his name? What's the old Falcons name?
Yep,
Old
that's
Falcons
him.
coach.
That's him.
It just didn't sound right, but
Yeah,
you
just
know.
Arthur Smith. I know. It just sounds so gross.
So it'll be interesting to see. And I mean, I thought the Cowboys were supposed to be all in, and we'll see if this draft pans out. Then they'll be a contender again. A contender. They'll make it far and lose, but we'll we'll see. We'll
I
see.
guess we'll have to see, brother.
We'll see, brother. Sketch introduced a pick for the Texans, brother.
Hey, I know that was fantastic. He got the crowd hyped. He got the crowd hyped, brother.
Ah, he did,
And you
brother.
know
He
what's
did, brother.
crazy? You know what I'm super excited for?
What's that?
The Ravens and the Commies play each other this year.
They sure do.
It's going to
They sure
be
do.
Jaden Daniels versus Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson versus Lamar Jackson 2.0, brother. Who's going to win?
That needs to be prime time Thursday night. That's
I
what that
can't
needs
wait
to
to
be.
talk about that on the pod, brother.
It's gonna be fantastic. It's gonna be fantastic. We won't have an episode that week if the Ravens lose though.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. It'll be all about the commies, brother. How great the draft was. A plus. Adam Peters is the future.
Thought the draft was really good overall. I think the Ravens improved. I think the Commanders improved. I think a lot of teams improved. So it's just tricky because at this point I think everybody's optimistic about everybody. Even you get this seventh round pick and you're like, oh, they have potential, and then a lot of these guys aren't going to turn into all that we expected it to be. So it's going to be fun to see, though. I mean, this is the
Absolutely.
start.
Yep.
We're getting there.
Yep.
Any final thoughts before we send it off?
Nah, man, I'm just excited. After the draft, the draft season was really hyped up this year. I was really excited to see how the board fell. I think a lot of teams got a lot of steals. I think a lot of teams reach. So I'm excited to see how it plays out in the real season.
For sure, for sure. It's coming up. Next up, the next big event's probably schedule release, which I think is in May. So we're
It
getting
is
there.
in May.
Thank you guys for joining us in another episode of the Sofa Sports Podcast. Until next time.